Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. Coming on Power Talk, thank you so much for making us part of your day today. And as we continue to traverse through this very unknown time in our history as it relates to our socio-political path and really the kind of government that we believe we have, I think the most important people to call upon are people that are melodic improvisers, people that create new pockets of vocabulary in a nonverbal fashion that allow people to dance and allow people to enter the spirit mind. And because when you do that and you stop thinking logically, then all of a sudden you're leading with your heart. Chances are, if you're on the bandstand with other cats that are also listening, doing deep listening, that you're going to be able to stretch the vocabulary of music, raise the collective consciousness of the unit, and also the audience that is being able to heal through the vibration of the music. One of the issues right now is that there is no live domestic touring circuit. It's hard to believe that the one industry that has basically come to a complete halt is live spiritual healing music on a consistent basis. And it's a quandary, and I don't think people understand that the dysfunction, the relative dysfunction that we're seeing on a worldwide level has a lot to do with the fact that there is the vibration, the overall universal vibration, and the frequencies that create that are incredibly low. And I got a chance today to speak to a philosopher and a teacher of music and wisdom, and also somebody who has created a lot of incredible music and grooves over the years with his compadres. He's a healer in his own right, but as he told me the other day on the phone, it's a transitional time. And I think for people, they better recognize that sooner than later so that they can continue to be liberated and not be still stuck in some old paradigm, because the future is now. Ra-Kalam, Bob Moses, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Oh, thank you, Jake. That's so beautiful. Your intros are something else, man. That's great.
You know what it used to, you know what's so cool is that, like, when I first interviewed you, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago, like, I used to write them out, and now it's like just a solo. It's just like comes right off the top of my head, you know, and just
that's what I thought I was going to ask you, but it sounded like that, like you were just blowing,
blowing.
But it was high level blowing, you know? Definitely.
Hey, I wanted to ask you.
Good for you, Jake.
Thanks,
yeah.
Rockwell.
So we're
I appreciate
all evolving, man. We have to.
Hey, man. I mean, it's about also doing something new, and I think I just wanted to ask you. I know your parents were really hip, and you had all sorts of cats coming through the apartment growing up. But how did you wind up in the studio with Rahsaan Roland Kirk?
Oh, Rahsaan was like, he was like my other dad, man, In fact, I used to hang out at his house more than in my own house.
Wow.
And I wound up, helping him to a certain extent because he was blind. And, we used to walk all around New York. And in those days, we had record stores, You'd have loved it, Jake. A giant space full of nothing but LPs.
Man, and music stores, too, like Manny's Music.
Yeah, music stores, too.
Yeah.
But I would take Rahsaan. He was just Roland then. He wasn't Rahsaan yet.
Right.
To Sam Goody's. That was the big music record store in those days. And he would make me like, well, he didn't make me, but he would, he was pretty, he got what he wanted. He was a forceful cat, great cat, He didn't, it's hard to take no for an answer with Rahsaan. But he wanted me to read all the liner notes to all these records. So I was always a pretty good reader, but I became like a speed reader. And I remember asking him, I'd say, Ro, man, why do you care what these white critics are writing about the music? Why don't I just tell you who's on the record
right.
and, when it was recorded? And he said, no, I want to hear everything. He really wanted to hear what people had to say. He was very interested. And so, that was hours. And he liked to include me when he could, I remember when he rehearsed at his house, man, and I was playing vibes, and a really beginner vibes player. I hadn't really studied much. I'd play some Latin music, but generally I was just soloing on two chords,
Right.
And so I remember being at his house, and I had the vibes set up, and he was rehearsing, and one time the band was I think Andrew Hill was on piano. You know, one of the
Oh
greatest
my!
to my
Are
mind.
you
One
kidding
of the
me?
visionary
Oh,
genius. I love that cat. And Walter Perkins was playing drums. He was
oh,
a great drummer.
yeah.
In fact, he was Mingus's second favorite drummer after Danny Richmond. Walter Perkins was great. But I don't remember the bass now, but it was somebody of that caliber. And I was sitting in on vibes, man, and they were playing tunes, you know, beautiful tunes with changes, like Dearly Beloved and things like that. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was absolutely faking it. And, you know, and I kept waiting one of them to say, "What are you doing, man? Like, put the vibe malice down. Come back in 10 years when you know something about music." But they never did. They always said, yeah, Bobby, sounding good for it. And I realized in retrospect, I was doing something that I still do and I still recommend as a teacher. Not all the students take me up on it, but first of all, I was watching the drums, matching the energy of the drummer, Walter. So I was kind of swinging because he was swinging. And then I was hitting all kinds of wrong notes, but then I learned a few tricks like, you know, if you hit a note that doesn't sound right, keep chromatic it down to the until you
I
get a
love
good one.
this, dude. Yeah.
And then the other trick I learned was you hit a note that wasn't quite right, hit it again. So it's like, no, that's not a mistake. I meant that shit, man. You know, it's like, what? You don't like
Yeah.
a little dissonance? Come on, man.
I love
But the
this.
thing that I noticed was really this is how little science I had or knowledge was. You know, I'd see certain notes worked on the A, and so and certain notes didn't. But then I'd notice on the bridge, maybe this note that previously didn't work does work, so now I can include it. And maybe one that was working doesn't work as much, so I'd leave that one out. And the thing about it, by the time if I played 2 or 3 choruses, I was hitting hardly any wrong notes. But the main thing was I was matching the energy, and I think that's why they allowed me to do it. They knew I didn't know what I was doing, but they were kind enough. And these were cats not necessarily known for kindness. They were some tough dudes, man. But they were kind to me for whatever reason. They saw something in me, and I think it's because I was watching them so closely and following at least the rhythm, even if I couldn't get all the notes.
I love this. I mean, to me, it's like, I mean, first of all, they weren't like, they wouldn't have kept you on there if you really couldn't. They knew you were hungry. They knew you were a musician. And honestly, I mean, I worked with the blind and visually impaired for 8 years before I went off to do my show. And for you to improve Ro's quality of life by doing what you did, there was a deep bond there, meaning that they knew that you weren't at a high level of musicianship, but your devotion to the music and the friendship you had, that's why it happened. I mean, that's so beautiful.
You're right, Jake. That's it. They felt the love because I did really. These were my heroes and my mentors, and I would do anything for them. And they were, you know, to this day, I'm still kind of amazed that they let me in to the extent that they did. But you have to understand, too, this wasn't a gig. This is a rehearsal, so different. But later I actually did gigs with Ra-Kalam on drums, and I do have, with Rasan on drums, but I also, you know, recorded just a brief thing on vibes. When it is a record he did called I Talk with the Spirits, which is a beautiful record. It's an all-flute record. He was completely unique.
Well, that's what I was referring to on Limelight in '65. That's your first date.
It might have been, yeah. I was pretty young, man.
You were young,
and
man.
I just happened to be in the studio, and he let me improvise something. And at the time, I was working on some Bach pieces, so I kind of improvised something that had a Bach flavor. And he jumped in on the flute, and then that's Walter Perkins at the end going something like laughing and going, "Ooh, that's nice, flute fuguing and alluding," or something.
Fuguing,
and that
man.
became the title. And then there's another date that's a great date. I think that's probably my favorite Rasan record is a record called Rip, Rig, and Panic.
I know, yeah.
And I had a tiny little thing on that, too. You know, not very inconsequential, but it was great to be there and take part in it. And that record had Elvin, Richard Davis, and Jackie Byard. That's a killing band. And there was one tune where Roland wanted the sound, Rasan wanted the sound of glass breaking. Like the idea was he's going to hit this harmonic on the saxophone, and then that would break a window, right? So it was my job to break the bottle, and this was at Rudy Van Gelder's studio. And I don't know if you know this about Rudy, but great man, great engineer, no question about it. But he was very uptight about
Oh, totally, yeah.
cleanliness. He was like a clean freak, anal to the max. The dude wore white gloves when he recorded, and they didn't get dirty over the course of the day. This is like crazy. And I don't know how he kept the studio that pristine, considering every day he was having these ne'er-do-well jazz cats come through there. But anyway, he was horrified at the idea of breaking glass in his studio. But again, Rahsaan was adamant, it was like important to the music. And so what the idea was, he had a little backyard. This was in Englewood, New Jersey. He had this little plot of land outside the house. And we went out there and found a stone, a good-sized stone, and we put the stone at the bottom of a metallic wastepaper basket, and they put the mic over the wastepaper basket. And the idea was I would break the bottle on the rock, it would get recorded, but none of the glass would get out, would get on in the studio or something. So anyway, we did the take, and he hit this crazy note, and he waved at me, pointed at me, and I broke the glass. And I thought it was, great take, but I'm just a kid. All of it sounded great to me.
Sure.
And but Rahsaan wanted to do another take. He said, "No, I want to do that again." I said, "Okay." So we need another bottle, and nobody had a bottle right handy. And Elvin, I guess I can tell this story, but it's a good story. He pulled out a bottle. It looked like it was like a fifth of scotch or whiskey, like almost full, like 2/3, 3/4 full. Wow. And it was like a scene from a John Belushi scene or something. Where he tilted the bottle back, and one breath, it was like the whole bottle in one gulp.
Oh my God, dude, the whiskey,
man!
And
then he looks at it's like superhuman shit. Again, you'd see that in a movie, but it probably wouldn't be whiskey. It would be
apple
Coke
juice,
or something.
Whatever. Yeah.
And he goes, "Here, you need a bottle? Here you go, kid." He hands me the bottle, man. And if you listen to that record, it's really pretty easy to tell the that incident and the after that incident, because Elvin was always super loose, but he's really loose after he downed that whole bottle, man. So I got to do take two with Elvin's discarded whiskey bottle. But it's a funny story.
Wait, hold on.
So that's on impact on the record. It's a great record, man.
Rip, Rag, and Panic. You're on that.
Rip, Rig, and Panic.
You're breaking the bottle on that one.
Yeah, I actually played some orchestral chimes on one tune. There was some chimes in the studio, and he wanted this little background line. I think it was a tune that was something like dedicated to Biased, Unbiased, I think Fat Swell. It was a couple of names of people that were important to him, and that's the tune. I have a little, so like a minuscule contribution, but it was great just to be in the studio and to see Elvin and actually be at the rehearsal for that record, which was at the 5 spot, the old 5 spot.
Oh, that's so cool.
That was interesting too.
Ra-Kalam, it's been so long since we did our first interview, and I've been shedding a lot, and I wanted to put in, we have a game on this program called Name That Voice, and I'm going to put this in. Pay attention to the content, and then we'll come back and break it down.
Okay.
In terms
Well, they were completely creating music within the music. You have structures, you have little sequences of changes and harmonies, and there might be a certain tempo that something somebody plays might suggest, and to listen to records is one thing, but when you're in a room with the music, it affects you in another kind of way too. I was never in a room with the Miles Davis band that you're speaking on. With Wayne and Tony Williams, Ron Carter, and Herbie. But now through the years, I've played. The only one I never played with was Tony Williams. But I've played with Ron Carter. I've played with Wayne and Herbie, and it's something when you're sharing the space with someone and not just playing at the same time, but trying to create some music together, you know. And all of that is a spiritual thing. Like the John Coltrane Quartet, we could listen to those records over and over again, and we're captured completely. But I mean, I was never in the room with that quartet. That would have been a whole other thing for me in my development. Right. But I played a lot with McCoy and a lot with Elvin, you know. And that teaches you a lot of things about that Sufism, about the spiritual side of things.
Ra-Kalam, you want to take a guess at who that is?
I really don't know, but it must be a great musician because of the people he's played with.
Well, and I have a couple. This is a multi-pronged question. That was an interview I just did with Joe Lovano. And
I should have recognized his voice. It did sound familiar. I know Joe.
So, of course. I mean, Ra-Kalam, you were at this pivot point. He was talking at the beginning, though he didn't. It was not clear. He saw the Keith Jarrett band with Dewey and Paul Motian in '71, and he was talking. And Charlie, thank you. And he said that they were vibrating on tonalities. And I know that you were in the same pocket with Steve Marcus, and also like McLaughlin told me in our fourth interview that when he got to New York, he was so frazzled by the tempo that he had not gone to the ashram yet. He had not connected with Sri Chinmoy. He was going to these Sufi dances, and who was there but Paul Motian? And I'm just like, the rhythm cats, Hayden, Motian, I'm like, Ra-Kalam was definitely involved with the Sufis a little bit. And I want you to talk about that time, because that era, that Morning Star era, a lot of people would go back and say, and I'm one of them, 61, you go to that Vanguard session with LaFaro, Motian, Bill Evans, you can't get any better than that. But then 71, you were right in that whole thing about playing music within the music, and it coincided with this Sufism. And I wanted you to just talk about where you were at that time and how that was stretching the vocabulary of the music.
Well, it was a very fertile time, and there was it seemed to be a certain aura of freedom and experimentation. There was something about it. 60s, 70s, definitely. I know you love that period, Jake. I feel blessed to have been
lucky,
part of it.
Yeah, man.
And you know, I did hear Coltrane a lot live. I would guess 100 times probably.
Jeez,
and
God.
And a lot of other great things. You know, when it was really fresh and hitting. And the first time that I heard Coltrane live, it was at a concert at one of the big halls in New York. It was either Town Hall or Carnegie Hall, somewhere midtown. It was about 1961, so I was like 13. So, you know, I may not remember all the details, but there are certain things I remember very well to this day. And I brought my little girlfriend, or was hoped to be girlfriend, this concert. And we sat in the last row because we were, you know, just kids, so we got the cheapest seats. And I remember the concert was Thelonious Monk's group, included Charlie Rouse. I think Frankie Dunlap was on drums. They had a left-handed bass player, I forget, but he was great, of course. And this is the same guy who played on the Coltrane Lush Life. Earl May, maybe. I don't know. Lefty.
Earl,
great.
was it Wade Leggy? No?
I don't know. No, the bass player with Monk, but I don't know. But I remember he was left-handed because that was unusual. But anyway, and then Sonny Rollins' group, which included Paul Bley, Henry Grimes, and Roy McCurdy, who was great drummer.
McCurdy, man, he's still doing
and
it.
McCurdy is a badass. He's one of the swinginest drummers, groovinest drummers of all time. He was a drummer, I believe, on Cannonball Mercy Mercy
he was.
track, which
That's
is
right.
super soulful. But anyway, you know, and Sonny came out in a mohawk, wearing a white tuxedo with a mohawk. And this is mohawks
61,
before the
man.
English punks started, you know, having a mohawk style and all that. So that was kind of shocking. But then the last group was Coltrane's group. He had just formed his own group as a leader, pretty recent, and he had Elvin McCoy and Steve Davis on bass. This is before Jimmy. So, and they had just recorded the first version of My Favorite Things on Atlantic, I believe. Yeah, and
you mean Art Davis, right? Art Davis.
No, it wasn't Art Davis. Steve Davis. Art Davis was later.
Okay.
Steve Davis, I think he's from Philly or something. He was one of the first bass players with Coltrane when he went on his own. Shortly replaced by Jimmy Garrison.
Got it.
He also had Kuhn in his band for a minute, and Pete LaRocca too. He had a few different bands, but the one I heard first was almost the classic quartet, except it was Steve Davis instead of Jimmy. But the thing is, when Coltrane started playing, even at 13, I knew, oh, this is different. Like Monk is great music. Sonny Rollins, great music. But when I heard Train, I said, that's more than music. I didn't even probably know the word spiritual at age 13, you know. but I knew it was spiritual. I knew it had a dimension of prayer. It was also, one of the things that McCoy just set up this vamp for Coltrane. Well, he didn't play any right-hand stuff. It was just a rhythm, a chordal rhythm. It's kind of like a to the 3/4 and he just playing that with Elvin, and it was so swinging and nothing else happening. And I remember people saying, "Oh, he can't play."
Wow.
And I knew he could play because I'd heard him with the Jazz Tet, which was a great band with Benny Golson was in that band.
Art Farmer, maybe?
Art Farmer, yeah. Right. I think Tom McIntosh did the arrangements.
Ridiculous band.
And that was McCoy, really young McCoy, and I knew right away this guy is one of the greatest of all times, clear. But with Train, he wasn't doing any of the right-hand stuff. And it was just like a trance, and he kept it going and going and going, and it was so egoless, man. And that's when I understood this is a different thing. And because he didn't play anything except the vamp, when Train finally came in, and he really made you wait. Again, it was like different level of patience with this music, more like Indian music, where they play one tune for 2 hours, you know, and the alap, the part before the drum comes in, that's 40 minutes of rubato. It was more that vibe. And when Train finally came in, it's like the dam broke, man. He came in on the soprano, and I was gone. And from that moment on, music became something different to me. I understand it had a capacity for healing in certain instances, depending on how the musicians lived and where they were coming from. Because it wasn't just their musical excellence, because the Monk had that, Sonny had that, all these other groups had that, but this was a little different. And because I recognized that, I had enough psychic,
well, you could feel it.
Intuition.
Yeah.
That's what set me up for Tuskegee.
I want to be clear, though. I want to be very...
the difference of Coltrane and the other peeps, including Miles. And I heard Miles's group with Tony and Wayne and all those guys many times. In fact, we were on the same tour in '68. We went to Europe together. But the music was great, no question, but the vibe was very different.
This is so... You're articulating it so well, and it's just so beautiful to hear it. But you're saying that... Because way back when I interviewed DeJohnette, and Jack, was the guy who hit me to you, actually, he said that that there was a sanctified feeling to Train's music. You feel like the spirit, even though Monk was a genius and Sonny is still a genius, they were, I don't want to say more straight, but somehow Train had a more sanctified spiritual sound.
No question about it. No question. I think if you listen psychically, it's very obvious.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's the thing is, those other cats, I don't want to speak for them, but it seemed to me that they were about the music itself.
Dig.
And that's okay. That's the art of it, But Train was more like prayer mode, man. It was a message behind it that was different, and it struck me right away, and that changed my, that, and also knowing certain people like Edgar Bateman, for example, who was the greatest drummer I ever heard, and almost nobody knows about him.
My God.
these were my heroes. When my other hero was Elmo Hope, was who is in his own way as great as Monk and Bud Powell, but
Totally.
not nearly as well known. And there was something about my karma is that my heroes were the people who were great but not known. I mean, Train was known; he was different. But I love these guys in a certain way. I think subconsciously I followed in their footsteps.
Right.
In other words, I put the music first, integrity first, and it didn't matter if I had gigs or not had gigs, if I was making money or not making money. When I heard Edgar Bateman play the drums, and this guy was hardly working, but the way he played, I said, man, if I could play 1/4 as good as that someday, I'd be happy. And so for me, the motivation has always been to be able to sit behind your instrument and make some magic happen. And if I can do that, I'm a happy guy. Now, beyond that, if people like it, if people buy it, great. But it's never been my main concern, and that's why I have no hustle chops whatsoever. And I've put out 28 albums in the last few years, 10 years or so, with a lot more coming. And I don't think any of them sold more than 100 copies. And that's my fault. It's okay, though. But my focus is just doing it and feeling good about it.
Absolutely. It's about constant creation. The definition of success to me is how can you cut above the morass of everybody else who's doing what you're doing? How can you have a unique voice and be singular? That's success.
Thank you. I think so.
No, I mean, that's absolutely what it is.
I'm at. Very good. And I'm liking how I play more now than ever. It's not as strong or fast or macho, but it's better. I think it's deeper.
Well, I got to tell you something. I want to tell you one thing. I mean, this is. I was at Tasiji's house a few years ago, and we were listening to this recording of a performance that he did with you and Pharaoh, and you were playing to the heavens, and Tasiji was really locked in that night and just burning all over the place. And when I asked him about his relationship with Pharaoh, he said that Pharaoh cut off his friendship with Tasiji because of that recording, because Pharaoh wasn't happy with how it was mixed, and he was also not happy with your drumming. And I was like, you know what? I'm like, Ra-Kalam's drumming was insane, and Pharaoh was pissed because he didn't show up at high vibration as Tasiji that night. That's just what it was. But yet he decided to. It was just like. So you mentioned the other day, I'm too intense. People don't necessarily want to play like. I wouldn't change a thing, man. I don't even understand what people are talking about. Like when I heard that recording, it was like you and Tasiji were operating on one frequency. Pharaoh just couldn't get up that night to do it. And
Pharaoh was in poor health. I think Pharaoh played amazing.
He did play amazing. He did. Tasiji was just playing way beyond.
Well, that's because Tasiji lives that. I mean, Pharaoh, as great as he is more on the working musician circuit, which means to a certain extent playing it safe. Right. I did see Pharaoh at one of those clubs in Boston, the Regatta or something. Oh, I forget which one it was, but like that, it's like a hotel, and he was just playing great. He was playing great, but all standards, ballads. He wasn't blowing like he does with Tasiji. And Tasiji's mission is to liberate people if you're open to it.
Oh, he is.
And on a lesser level, that's my mission as well. Because I've noticed that musicians that I play with, they will step out of their usual stuff, usually, at least for a day, and that's part of what I'm here to do. I did a date that, and you can see this on YouTube. We didn't make physical copies, but it's available as a digital download of a concert called Generations. It was a very gifted student who went to NEC for a few years. He was one of his students. His name was Marcelo Perez, great young drummer. And so for his senior recital, he decided to do an all-drum concert of his three mentors, which happened to be Billy Hart, myself, and this great Cuban drummer, Daphnis Prieto. And so, I know Billy can play free, but he doesn't usually. I think most of his gigs are like groups like the Cookers, playing hard bop, modal, whatever, swing and shit. great, high level.
Yep.
And Daphne's, I'd heard his records. The dude is a monster. There's no question. But it was very all arranged, from my opinion, maybe a little overwritten, but slick and complicated and burning and played at the highest level, And this date, if you check it out, it's all free, man. And we played a 20-minute quartet completely free, and it's beautiful.
Wow.
And the thing is,
wow.
I don't want to sound like I'm patting myself
come
on
on,
the back,
dude.
But,
no, this is your time.
But that was me. That was me, because they don't usually play that way. At least Daphne's doesn't. And he came to my house the next day. I wish that was recorded. And we played duo free. And he was great at it. And this is something that I've long believed, I keep an open mind because you could take different paths to it. But when it comes to free music, the people who are masters of the fundamentals, that is melody, harmony, rhythm, sound, tone, form, musical form, are the ones best equipped to play free, but they rarely do it. And a lot of the people playing free that can't swing, can't play a ballad, can't play on the changes, can't play no funk, can't play like this basic stuff. And it may be great anyway. I'm not saying it's possible you can skip all that and come up with some great stuff. But generally, the people who play free that I liked the most were masters of form, like Tuskegee, like Coltrane, like Farrell, like Jim Pepper. So I like to get these guys off their usual when they play with me, and I think they understand that. So, I think people enjoy it, but then they also probably enjoy going back to their more normal.
No, I don't.
I mean,
I'm so it's been played out so much that, I don't take no guardrails is absolutely the key to liberation. But I do want to go back to one thing because
that people are afraid and they're attached to their success.
Yeah, I just was. You know what it was? You know what was shocking? It just
wasn't. People were walking out on Train.
Sure.
People don't know this.
No. Eddie Henderson said that white women would be standing up, screaming, "Make him stop! Make him stop!" It was.
Man, Jake, not just white women, man. I was playing in a black club with Rasan when I was 16 or 17 in Philly. It was in the hood, and during the break, they played records. They played LPs, and I was looking at the collection, and they were all this kind of organ kind of stuff. Jimmy Smith, Jack McDuff, Rump Roller, Greasy, like what I call greasy jazz. Which, by the way, I love that shit. Grant Green, all this stuff, real groove stuff, like where jazz meets R&B stuff. Those were all the records. And in the midst of this pile of records, I see Coltrane, Ohm, and I remember I asked the bartender guy, said, "Hey, could I play this one?" And he probably didn't realize what it was. So he said, "Yeah, whatever, you pick it." I put that on, and this is a club full of black people in Philly, mid-'60s, whatever. And within 30 seconds, Jake, turn that shit off.
Wow.
That ain't music. That's just noise. And this was black people talking about John Coltrane. If there's any person the black race, American, Native, whatever you want to call African American, could be proud of, it's John Coltrane, man. But they couldn't take it.
Also, let's also
off. And I saw it. It was shocking to me. But
Well, no, but also that's a hip club in Philly, not a historically black college, which never wanted anything to do with jazz. But we're talking about a supposed music club in Philly of patrons. I'm just saying that, like, what
I'm saying is Train wasn't afraid if people didn't like it.
I dig. No, listen.
He was fearless that way. He had to go forward. He couldn't go backward, just stay where he was. People had finally come to accept the quartet with Elvin and McCoy, my favorite things, which was radical when it first came out, but people were starting to dig it. And then when he left that and had, Alice and Rashid and Farrell, a lot of people were leaving, man. But, Train wouldn't, he wasn't going to go backwards, man. And I'm not either. I'm not saying I'm at that level, but I have the same feeling about it. I have no attachment to people understanding it or digging it. Some people do. And
we just lost, talking to Ra-Kalam Bob Moses here on the Jake Feinberg Show, and we just lost the beautiful cat last week. who considered him. Jerry Grinelli said that
Oh, did he pass, Jerry?
Jerry. Yeah, well, actually, he had. This is a crazy story. He was up in Nova Scotia, and he was actually dead. This is going back a couple months, and a young doctor, against all the medical advice, was curious as to what the heck was going on with him. I guess he had some sort of massive internal bleeding, and the doctor did something very avant-garde. Obviously, he didn't listen to what people thought was wrong with Jerry. Brought Jerry back to life. Turns out the doctor is a Grinelli freak, has been to every concert he's ever been to in Nova Scotia. So he put he got Jerry back home. I did my third interview with him, and was so beautiful a few weeks after. And he talked about, we're talking about a guy who was at Naropa, playing with Ginsberg, doing contact improvisation with Art Landy. He goes, I can't.
Yeah, I remember. He was in Colorado for a while. I saw him out there too one time. Yeah.
And I think you're the same way, Ra-Kalam. I wanted you to talk about being an innovator, because you can't will that on a lot of people. People are either they can't follow, they just have to be innovators. And I feel like that's what you've been doing your whole career. And that is also the insecure path, because it's very hard to be commercially viable when you're constantly ahead of the game. I mean, Jerry went to the Cats at Cornish, or maybe in Nova Scotia, and said, I can guarantee you this program will never make any money. But you know what? So many cats used to come there to teach because of the freedom of it. And it's just,
oh yeah.
And I wanted you to just talk about, for younger cats who are scared, even though they know they can't follow and that they have to innovate and that they have these ideas, how to cultivate a situation where you can act on that stuff, build a community, and be at peace, and actually maybe sing for your supper a little bit.
Well, that's asking a lot, Jake. I'll just take the one.
Yeah,
be true to yourself. Go inward instead of always outward. Mm-hmm. That's the problem with a lot of the jazz education. They're always studying outward. In other words, they're learning so much of what these past masters did, and it can't help but get in the way. I don't agree with that. That's why I'm kind of out of tune with the whole mostly education thing, which is, I say go inward, man. That's what the greats did, Like, listen, I grew up in the same building with Max Roach, Art Blakey, and Elvin Jones. And, okay, Max, I loved him, but I didn't want to play like that. Blakey, loved him, man. He was, Blakey's band killing me, but I didn't want to play like him. But I have to say, Elvin, I kind of did. I heard Elvin, I said, man, that's how drums should sound.
Right.
And I think if you listen to any of my records recently, I'm about to send you a bunch, including some of Tasigi's stuff.
Please.
I got a couple of packages ready for you.
Right.
I don't think you'll hear a trace of those cats at all, zero. So I don't say it's anywhere as good as Elvin, probably never even get close, but at least I can look in the mirror. I stand on my own 2 feet. I honor the people that inspire me by not stealing their stuff, man. By doing what they did, which is to go inward and find your own. I've been playing congas a lot lately, man, because I got this beautiful set of Giovanni Galaxy congas. It's like a guy who can barely drive getting a Lamborghini, man. I don't even deserve these drums, but I said, look, I'm getting old. If I don't get them now, I'm never, for my last 10 or 15 years, I should have these drums because they're so great. They're so beautiful. They almost play themselves, and I've been watching clips of a lot of great congueros, Giovanni himself, who's, to me, he's like the Coltrane of the congas, but a bunch of people, inspiring players, and most of them, of course, in the culture, Afro-Rican, Afro-Cuban, whatever, they're in the culture bag, but killing. And I'm very inspired by watching them, and it shows to me how much I don't know, like all the different sounds, the way they get a slap sound, which I'm having difficulty getting that sound. So I talked to Tasiji about it, and he said, oh, yeah, don't worry about what you don't know. He said, go inward, find your own way of playing.
Exactly.
Which, the truth is, that's what I was doing already. But he gave me like, it's okay, man. He gave me the okay. And I'm playing some beautiful shit on these congas, man. I've already recorded a bunch of stuff. I mean, they sound great on their own. And I'm in there, even there, I got something a little different. I use a talking drum, which doesn't get in the way while I'm playing three congas, so I can bend tones. And all these great congueros who are way, way better than me, but I hadn't seen anybody doing that. And I also was noticing, as much as I love playing these congas, and I'm really digging playing them more than the drum set, because they're much more beautiful, musical sounding. Plus, it's hands, and hands, the sticks sound harsh compared to hands.
Sure.
And so, I'm loving the congas, but I was missing the feet thing. On the drum set, you got feet going, right?
Absolutely.
And that enables a certain polyrhythm thing, because it's not just your hands. Hands are doing one thing, feet are doing something else, so it sounds more tribal, more polyrhythm. And I always wanted to sound like more than one cat anyway. So this guy, from a beautiful young saxophone player from Ecuador, he's in Brazil now. His name is Daniel Bitran. He was moving from Boston to Brazil, and he had a bunch of percussion stuff, including this ethnic drum from Ecuador. It's a tiny little drum, but it's calf skin. It's like a folkloric instrument. And I figured out a way to rig it up as a bass drum. And if you let it untune a little bit, in other words, keep it out of the sun, it gets kind of low, and man, it's the most killing bass drum sound. So I'm using that in conjunction with the congas too. So, yeah, I'm getting my own thing on it, man. I'll never play the traditional thing like those guys do. It's inspiring to watch.
Well, you're playing yourself, but I mean, like the thing is, are you?
It's not bad.
Do you have Are you using your feet with that Ecuadorian drum, or how?
Yes, I use it as a bass drum. It's small, and so it goes where my right foot would be. I got the three congas, talking drum. My engineer, it's like a 5-mic setup now. Each conga gets a mic. The talking drum, the mic stand goes between the left and middle conga. It's just enough space to get the mic through it, and so I got the talking drum on my shoulder. I play it with a hand. And then I've got this bass drum like Ecuadorian drum on, and man, I love it, man. I love it. I've been doing a whole bunch of recordings with that, and I'm getting the most inspiration playing the congas. I still enjoy watching these, conga masters, but I ain't trying to do what they're doing. I can't, and it's okay,
I want to ask you. This is something. This is really important. We led in with I don't know if you recognize the tune, but that was what you were talking about the other day. The Todd Rundgren tune. I'm in the click.
Yeah, that's a crazy tune. That's some wild stuff. And at first I didn't recognize it. I said, "What is that?" And then I heard the lyric, and I know.
So my question is, this is so interesting because we talked about C-Train, but also you're on this insane album that actually, I've never even seen before. Danny Kalb from the Blues Project, Cross Currents on Cotillion. So how did you connect with, for lack of a better word, the Woodstock / acoustic blues scene?
Well, I was in New York in the 60s, man, and we had a group called the Free Spirits, man. It was first jazz rock group.
Well, I know that. I mean,
so I was into rock, pretty early, man. I was digging the Stones, the Beatles, man. The band with LeVon Helm. That's my he's in my top 5 drummers of all time, man. I was loving that stuff, and I always listened to music. Not really from genre, it was more from soul. Like if it moved me, So it could, man, I love the country music. I love,
did.
Hank Williams and with Coryell, by the way, he was playing all of that, folk music, R&B, country music. Jim Pepper did a tune on Pepper's Powwow. He sounds like Johnny Cash, man.
Well, I mean,
I was in the Village. I heard Dylan. I heard Richie Havens and people like that, and I knew those cats. We used to get high together, man. So,
well, no, I want to be clear. I mean, Coryell,
cat, very damaged cat.
Who said that?
A lot of problems, but he was soulful. And
I wanted to say that Coryell, when I did Rest in Peace, he told me, he was trying so hard to get the gig with Dylan, but Mike Bloomfield got the gig. So I know you guys were into all that stuff, but there's a big difference.
Oh, the Cream. We love the Cream. And we opened for the Cream at the Fillmore West with Gary Burton, Summer of Love, 1968. And
no, but I mean,
Electric
there's a
Flag,
big difference.
Which was Bloomfield, and Buddy Miles was in the Electric Flag. Young Dave Sanborn was in the horn section, man, at the Fillmore West, man, in 1968, the Summer of Love. The place was packed, man, 3,000 people every night. And we opened with Gary Burton and Coryell. And me and Coryell we wanted so bad to get into the rock thing, and Gary kind of put the kibosh on it, but that's okay. We snuck some in, you know.
But I mean, there's a big difference. There's a big difference between like getting off on it, going to the Village Gate, and to see, and then actually like recording with Rundgren. I mean, how did you wind up recording with Calb? I mean, that album on Cotillion, man. I've never even seen that.
I've never seen it either. Honestly, Jake, I forgot that I'd done that. I've never heard it, man. Is it any good?
Well, I'm just saying, I'm looking at your discography here, which is very accurate. And, I talked with the Spirits, Rassan 65, and then I'm looking here, Danny Calb on Cotillion 69. I'm like, that is head. But, I mean, how did you get tight enough with Rundgren where he's like, because they call you Bobby Moses. You're recording on this stuff. And Levon and Danko are on the album, too.
I know. I feel so honored to be on the same record as Levon Helm, man. It's like, and Coryell's first record, which is called Lady Coryell, was mostly a duo with me and him. He overdubbed some
I love
guitar
that
and bass
album.
part.
Yeah.
Me too, man. But there's 2 tunes with Elvin and one with Elvin and Jimmy Garrison. So I'm on a record. Must have been 18 years old with Elvin and Jimmy. And of course, the tunes with Elvin and Jimmy are the best thing on the record. But I did okay for my age, and Coryell was beautiful. He was great already. He was.
But were you gigging?
Jake.
Were you gigging with Rundgren? How did you wind up?
No. I don't know how he knew about me, but somehow he called me. I really don't remember. Calb I used to see all the time because he'd play at the Cafe Agogo.
Right.
And I think he was friends with my wife. My first and only wife was an amazing woman named Teresa Del Pozzo. She's still kicking, and she was very active in the civil rights movement.
Wow.
And she knew Bob Moses, the guy who was very important in the movement. She knew all those guys.
Oh, rest in peace,
Carmichael,
by the way.
H-Rap Brown.
Oh, man.
That was my wife, Teresa, who was 6 years older than me. I got married when I was 18, I think, and she was 25. I was 20. So when you're 18, it's like, yeah, you want to be with a woman that's older, But I ran into her recently, and she's really little old lady now. She's still a powerhouse, though. But we didn't recognize each other at first, which was kind of funny. I sort of recognized her, but I think she knew Calb too. Calb was a beautiful cat, but very damaged. He had some mental issues.
He did. Blumenfeld told me about him. Yeah.
He tried suicide a couple of times. He was depressed. He didn't love himself very much, But he could play. He was. You know what? I think, Jake, I could be wrong. I'm kind of guessing to a certain extent.
Sure.
But some of these bands became famous, particularly, the white rock and rollers became famous, and they knew inside that they weren't as good as some of the black guys who weren't as famous, who invented the blues and invented the music. And I think they felt self-conscious about it, or a little guilty about it, and there are people even now who kind of talk about, white people shouldn't appropriate black music or something. Well, they truly loved it, and they played well. But yeah, I mean, he was no Buddy Guy or one of those guys, and yet at one point they were probably making a lot more money.
Right.
I remember seeing a concert where, remember Donovan, the kind of pop singer, folk singer?
Yeah.
He opened. I mean, he was the headliner, and B.B. King was opening for him.
Yeah, you sort of.
And I think some of these guys felt. I don't know about Donovan, but I think with Danny, he probably it was part of his self-esteem problem. Is they get rewarded for. Man, listen. When I was playing with the Free Spirits, we played rock joints, right?
Right.
And I can't even remember how many times people came up to me in the audience, stoned out hippies in the '60s, right, who said, "Man, you're the greatest drummer I ever heard." And of course, I wasn't the nice guy spiritual practitioner that I am now, Ra-Kalam, I was kind of a tough, brutal, dude.
Tough dude.
At that time, and I remember saying, "Really?" I said, "You ever heard Max Roach?" They said, "No." Yeah. You ever heard Roy Haynes? No. You ever heard Elvin Jones? No. So I said, well, so what the hell are you talking about? I'm the best drummer in the world. You don't know shit. You're an idiot. Get away from me. I didn't want to. And, they'd be like, oh, what did I say? I just was complimenting him. Why is he so angry? and I'm not proud of myself for reacting that way, but I realize in retrospect, I didn't want to hear it because I knew what great drumming was, and I knew how far away I was. And it wasn't helpful to me for someone to tell you you're great when you're not great. See, and that's what's happening that was happening, I think, with some of these guys who became somewhat famous in the rock scene.
I think you're 100% right.
There was a TV show recently. It was a great show, actually. It was like it's a few years back. It was like the 25th anniversary of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And so they had all these people playing, different artists, and oftentimes they'd have kind of a house band that would accompany many artists because they didn't have time to change the whole set for each person. And I remember kind of back to back, they had Jeff Beck and then Buddy Guy. Now, look, Jeff Beck is a wonderful guitar player. He's, and this is just my opinion. People can disagree if they want. Buddy Guy came out, and oh man, I'm sorry, it was at a whole other level. And yet, I think, probably Jeff Beck is much more famous and made a lot more money than Buddy Guy, and that's.
I want to be clear, though, what you're saying is that because of the self-esteem issue with certain cats, they actually felt like frauds. Because here they are making more money. Right. They're making more money. They have more accolades, yet they know that their mentors and heroes were way beyond. I think the issue is this. I remember, a guy who went through his own shit, Billy Kreutzmann, the drummer from the Dead, and I know people would come up to him, talk about hippies, being like, wow, you're the best drummer ever. And I remember him saying, he goes, my favorite drummer is Elvin Jones. He's like, I couldn't steal a lick from the guy, but I would always try to play in his spirit. And that's the same thing with Coltrane. It's like you want to play in the same spirit. You're never going to be able to do exactly what those cats can do. But as long as you play from your heart with honesty, sincerity, like you said, high level blowing. But I guess when you get into the material rock world and that kind of world, and if you're not feeling that great about yourself in general, then you're going to feel like a fraud, to different
degrees. Yeah. Look along the same lines, Compost in the early days, our manager, well, we had this guy for a while. He was a total shark, but that's who you want on your side when it comes to business. You want a shark, right? And he was the manager of Yes. So Compost opened for Yes, man.
Several Jack
gigs.
Told me that, dude. That's unreal.
Yeah,
unreal.
And now, by the way, the drummer at that time for Yes was Bill Bruford, and Bruford is a beautiful, great drummer, no question about it. And because he was young then, but even then he was a very good drummer and nice cat. I don't think he was suffering from self-esteem in the way that Calb or some of these guys did. But I remember he would even say, man, because at Compost we'd finish with a double drum solo, me and Jack. 20-minute double drum thing, and Bruford would be watching us, man. And I remember him saying, man, I can't believe you guys are opening for us. He
that
said,
is
we should
unreal,
be opening for
dude.
you.
Oh my! Wait, where are the tapes of you and Jack doing 20-minute solos?
Jack's got them,
dude. I'm telling you, that should have been side B of the third Compost record, if there ever was one. I mean that.
Right. Well, they wouldn't let us do that. I mean, that's the records were a pale comparison of how we played live. We were definitely more like Train vibe, except with more of a rock funk kind of groove.
Dude, it's the filthiest music ever. Yeah.
We were stretching out. We played 40-minute on one tune, and some of those double drum things were more than 20. They were like 40-minute, and this is after playing an hour and a half set. we would send the rest of the cats home. Sometimes you'd have people who put on a show, they have the drum solo at the end of the show, and then the band is kind of waiting on the wings, and then when the solo is over, they come back and play the outhead, right? Me and Jack would say, no, we don't need no outhead. You guys can go get a drink, get a sandwich, talk to the girls, whatever you want. We'll finish it. And they never came back for the outhead. So we would play, and this was young Jack too, and this it would go. And I remember a couple of times after that, I'd come to Jack and say, "Man, Jack, you just never stop, dude." I said, "You're an animal, man. I couldn't believe it." And he said, "Me? It was you." I said, "No, man, it was you, man, because I wanted to stop 20 minutes ago. I was dying, man." But he has that kind of energy. I still, to this day, I think it was him. But he would drive you, he'd push you to that.
But he was so egoless. I mean, you obviously were holding your own, but I got another name.
Barely. I improved a lot in that situation because
you did.
Our format was he would go first. He would start something and then I would come in and I would do something, and then we'd meld together. So the opening thing he'd do would be so badass, and then he'd look, "Okay, your turn." And man, if you didn't come up with something, you're going to look kind of silly. So that kind of challenge to. I remember when I did hear one of the tapes back, this was years ago at his house, he played me one of those double drum things. And when it first came on, it sounded like 5 drummers. And I said, "Jack, that's just you and me?" Because we had Juma in the band, too, so we had a third drummer sometimes, He said, "No, that's just me." He started off sounding like 5 drummers, and then it was my turn.
God.
And by the end of the thing, it sounded like 15 or 20 drummers. It sounded like a tribe of Ashanti drummers. The energy was so intense, man, because we were young, too, and strong, man.
I got another...
That shit never got recorded on a record, but, Jack had some tapes of it,
I'm going to... I got another Name That Voice for you. Take a listen to it, pay attention to the content, and we'll come back.
Okay.
77, I graduated high school, and 78, I was up, 77, 78, I was up in Boston. And I did see Alan Dawson quite a few times. But it seemed I was part of a generation that was coming in just after the post-bop acoustic musicians and the electric jazz musicians were starting to come onto
Exactly, yeah.
So Gary Burton had taught, and he'd moved out, and Alan Dawson had taught, and he'd moved out. And then the likes of, Kevin Eubanks and Steve Vai and the Fusion Cats, students of the Fusion movement were attending school then. So I got to see this beautiful marriage between the Keith Jarrett, Bob Moses, that kind of stuff, and then going into the Mike Stern, Steve Vai, and
well, I need you to break this down. This is so vital. Like, what was the Keith Jarrett Ra-Kalam thing, and then how was that different from the Mike Stern Vai? Just for the audience out there, the Vai Stern versus Jarrett Ra-Kalam kind of stuff. How is it different?
Right. Well, the vocabulary is constantly growing. So there's more patterns, there's more shapes, and there's more textures available now. There's more to the table. And the textures of absolute purity all the way to absolute distortion are all acceptable now. Maybe they weren't back in the day so much. So we have a bigger palette. We have more to work with. And there's also the influences of classical music, even like thinking of Frank Zappa and his love for Edgar Varese,
right,
and his use of polyrhythms, bringing that into commercial music seemed like that was definitely not going to work, conceptually. But he really he proved us wrong. You can play quintuplets inside of single note groupings and make it beautiful and elastic and wonderful. So I think I was coming along at a really cool time.
I mean, I don't know if you've even met this cat before. That was an interview I did with an amazing drummer, Jeff Sipe. Do you know him?
I do. I know. Yeah, but I think we've talked on the phone. Does he live like in North Carolina?
Exactly.
Somewhere?
No, he's down in Georgia, North Carolina. Yeah, really beautiful drummer, like incredible. And here he is in school, and he's talking about Ra-Kalam, Keith Jarrett versus, the beginnings of, I don't even know what you would call. I mean, can you talk about?
Well, he probably doesn't know my background, so he associated me with one thing that he heard.
I'm just saying,
I'm happy to be associated with Keith Jarrett. I mean, that's some pretty good company. But man, I was playing the rock stuff before they even had a fusion thing. The Free Spirits was fusion before there was a name called fusion.
Well, no, let's be very clear. That was that was the first fusion band. But the difference is that, rock music, very straight, very 4/4 straight ahead. You guys are blending everything. So what you were into rock and roll, but I guess we
were into everything, including Perez and Stockhausen and Messiaen and Charles Ives, man, and all of that would come in there. So I want
to ask you something though.
I've always been all inclusive if you're that kind of player. And by the way, Mike Stern is one of my favorite cats to play on, and one of the best records I ever made as a sideman, and there's a lot of them that I wouldn't necessarily recommend, but is a record by David Gross, who was my first playing buddy. And David Gross was in fact, he's my second favorite alto player after Cannonball. And he only really made one record as a leader. It's called The Final Answer to Everything. And that record has Eddie Gomez, Michael Cochran, Mike Stern, and myself, man. And that's one of my favorite records, man. Mike Stern, love Mike Stern. And, it's interesting, my advice to Mike Stern, which, he's another guy who's great, 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 but also, at least he did have some insecurities,
Sure.
When he played the blues, like the rock stuff, I said, that shit is strong. And I said, but you never go through a whole solo without showing that you're a jazz guy, dropping in some amazing run, giant steps kind of stuff. I said, why don't you just play that blues, loud blues? That's the strongest shit. And he said, you know what? Miles told me the same thing. But that was his. So I said, well, maybe with Miles, maybe you should listen to it, but to that advice. But the thing is, he I think also that was a little bit insecurity, because some of the jazz critics and stuff kind of put him down like he was just a rocker or something. And he wanted to have the cred of Wes Montgomery or the jazz cats who had maybe more chops or played more played more complex lines and stuff. So he always included both, and it works, man. I mean, it's fine. But I used to say, man, because when he played with me, that would be what I'd ask for. I said, just give me that rock shit, because I had a band called Mozamba that was kind of a world beat dance band music, and Stern was in that, passed through that. All these guys, Kevin Eubanks, Frizzell. It was a guitar-oriented band. Duke Levine and Dave Fusinski, who I just saw recently. I hadn't seen him in a while. We're all in Mozamba at different times, But Mike Stern is, one of my favorite cats. He's squinchable. Like when you hear something that makes your nose get all squinched up, like, woo, yeah.
He said
but
that.
I wish he didn't have to prove he was a jazz cat every single solo. That would be my only thing to Mike,
I dig it. No, he. I want to read you this. This is, I guess, what I was trying to get at with the Sipe thing. This is from Gene Perla, and he said, Jake, I've had this conversation with Liebman a couple of times. There's nowhere to go because everything has been done. The only things that appear to be available in terms of experimenting and putting things together is putting different instruments together, as well as incorporating different styles or genres of music. Those things are good. And I just want to ask you about, for younger cats, about whether you think, I think part of the issue is that we're in this chops-driven, heavily facility-driven time. There's a lot of wanking going on. Like you said, the people that knew and understand the rudiments can play free better than the people that play free that don't know the rudiments. And
I would say usually.
I just want you to talk about, like, instead of people trying to contort themselves into ridiculous things to try to come up with something new, what is the best, in your mind, what are the antecedents for a rhythm section that what they can do in order to create a petri dish for new vocabulary? Or do you think that everything has been done like Liebman and Perl have talked about?
No, I don't agree with that at all. I think that's a really
talk about what you think.
I think that's a very negative projection, and also not true. Not at all true. Not even close to being true. I would say that. Perl, I could expect that maybe from. I wouldn't expect Liebman to say that. You know. No, and listen, I play with Tuskegee, man. Every note is new. And I do this, and I'm not saying this again like it's any big deal, because to me it ain't no big deal. It's just like walking across the room. It's like walking, talking, breathing. But I make a new language every single time, and it sounds like a culture music. A lot of time people hear what I'm doing, they say, "Man, that sounds like Africa." I say, "Oh, I take that as a compliment. Thank you, because usually some great drumming comes from Africa, no question." I said, "But no, man, I'm just making that shit up. That's not African. That's my stuff at this moment. And next moment, going to be something else, man. Man, it's easy, Jay. Go back. That's never been played before.
No, I think what I'm talking. I think what we're referring to is like, like there were these beautiful transition periods. Sipe was talking about it as well, all through the decades. And I'm talking about like jazz was a popular music. Even in the 70s, it was fading. But collectively, and I understand like tapping it, like Tuskegee doesn't do it for the money. He's a healer. He's a teacher. But I'm just saying collectively, nobody can do it alone. Everybody thought Barack Obama was some sage. He's just one dude. You had three people in your apartment building that were first ballot Hall of Fame giants of music. So it's not so much about like you and that kind of universal healing language. It's about how do you get a collective momentum so that the cyclical nature of music can come back in a larger form and not just sort of in these sort of little blips and That's what I think they're getting at more than anything else, because there was a period of time, you lived through it, where there was constant progression of communal music, not just this or that in this little atmosphere. I understand that new things are being created all the time, but how do you get momentum for music of a new age?
Well, that's a good question. If you ever get the answer, tell me, because
I think that that's what
they don't have any momentum in terms of like how it's affecting the world or how many people I'm bringing into it.
Steve Marcus records are affecting the world.
If I can find one strong person to play with, I'm very happy. I do a lot of duo stuff, and I'm doing a lot on my own, even though I don't think I'm much of a soloist, but I've been doing these sonic beds, which is just me overdubbing on myself, and sometimes you might have to do it alone, and with the technology now and able to overdub on stuff, you could probably do it by yourself. I have a dear friend who's a wonderful drummer named Audra Menconi. She lives in San Antonio.
Sure.
And for her vision of stuff, she has a hard time finding musicians who can like really meet her where she is, And she's working with some young people, kind of training them and stuff, But man, she's learned how to play piano and bass, and she's singing and writing lyrics, and man, it sounds great. It's totally her, and it's simple, but maybe on those instruments, but her drumming is badass, and it's beautiful personal music, and so you have to work with whatever circumstances you can, Again, it's interesting because I was thinking along these lines. I talked to your friend Malcolm earlier today.
Oh, good.
Great conversation.
Good.
A beautiful cat.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to decide where to go next, and it might be Arizona, and it might be Memphis, Tennessee. But I was thinking, I'm just the vibe I'm getting. I could be wrong, but I'm thinking the way I like to play, which is more open, free, no bar lines. I joke about it. Once you get out from behind bars, you don't want to go back necessarily. I think I might be more able to find spirits like that in Arizona.
Of course you will, dude. Memphis is all stacks, it's all bars, man.
Right. It's old school shit. It's
all bars, dude.
High level and super soulful.
Sure.
But I don't think there's an openness to more free playing, and I'd like to be able to find at least a few people.
Dude, you're going to have discard on a regular basis out here, dude. You're going to have a spiritual breaking open of the skull on a regular basis.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I think so too. I'm looking forward to it. I'm definitely leaning towards Arizona. The thing, in many ways, the Memphis move would be a lot easier for me, but easier doesn't necessarily mean the right move. I think I have to, even if it's harder to pull off, I think I have to go for what's the right move, and that's one of the factors,
Sure.
Plus, there's bordering states that I know a lot of creativity I know going on in Colorado and Nevada and California.
New Mexico.
For sure,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, so I think that I do need to find certain people, and usually wherever I am, I tend to find the people I'm supposed to find. That's been a case since I was a kid. I seem to in the middle of nowhere necessarily I'll find the one person I'm supposed to find. Almost always. I don't want to count on it, but
I dig, man.
I think it will.
Ra-Kalam, I'll call you back right after this. We just cooked for 75 minutes. It was just a great, great hang, man. And I'll, whatever the future holds, I know it is all part of the plan. So thanks for being part of the show, man. It was a great hang.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks for having me. It was great talking with you, and your intros have definitely improved since the last time, and I'm glad to hear that right off the cuff. That's how we play. So you might as well talk like that.
High level blowing. You said, man. I love that.
Blowing,
I love it, man. Yo, thank you, brother.
All right.
Later.
So I'll talk. You call me back in a few.
You got it right now. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Jake. Love always. Love to everybody, to all the creative people with big hearts in the world. We need that.
Love always, man.
Love always.
All right.
Hugh.
Tremendous hang today with Kevin Murphy from Rufus, and now Ra-Kalam Bob Moses. That's it for the Jake Feinberg Show. We'll see you tomorrow.